Good morning, it's a beautiful sunny day, and today I'm going to make my dovetail marking and cutting guide jig thing. So I've got a couple of prototypes that I made. This one was the first version, inspired by Jonathan Catt's Moses one, but I wanted a handmade one because I'm tight, don't want to pay the money. This was fine for doing the tails. When it came to cutting the pins, because I didn't put magnets or enough size on that, they ended up wobbling a little bit. So back to the drawing board, and that's the Mark II prototype. It's a little bit better, but it's ended up narrower than I'd have liked. Also, there's not enough magnets here, so it was difficult to cut along those lines. I think I've used the sycamore, and that's quite soft comparatively, so the saw has cut into it. So I need to change the dimensions and change the timber. Now I wanted a nice contrast, because just because it's a jig doesn't mean it has to be unattractive. So my choices of wood, I've got some more sycamore, but the problems with the sycamore, so bye bye sycamore. I've got some ash, which is really good, heavy, solid, but I'm not sure that I've got enough play where these cutouts are on that piece of ash. I think oak, again, similarly, it's a bit small. We've got some sapele, but I think the rosewood's just marginally fatter and will work a little bit better. So I've got some bird's eye maple and I've got the rosewood, but I'm only going to be using this bit here. So off we go. So first step is cut this down on the miter saw. Now, it may seem a bit counterintuitive to be using a miter saw or a power tool to make a jig that's going to be used for hand cutting joinery, but the reason I'm making it is because I'm not very accurate when I'm using the saw. Tend to wobble, tend to go off the line, so I need this to be as accurate as I can possibly make it. Therefore I'm going to use power tools, because I can make sure that all the angles are correct and dialed in symmetrically, and therefore when I'm cutting something it will be a perfect match. So what I'm going to do is take this bit off here, and I'm going to leave this the length it is, and that will become clear a bit later on. So that's my waist. So just to clarify, I'm leaving it a little bit long till I've cut the joint. Now that should be 50 millimetres, about 2 inches. I was brought up with inches. Junior school did teach me metric and imperial, but something like this I like the accuracy of millimetres without having to make a little verbal salad out of the measurements. You know, I've got a line down the centre. It doesn't have to be neat, it's just a roughing guide. So I'm just going to square off the end of this. This is my very old shooting board. So, next step, a rough halfway line. Now I've got this at 63.6. Divide that by 2, 31.5. I know you're going, yes, half a millimetre is, you know, a bit of a ridiculous number, but is it any more ridiculous than a 64th of an inch? Probably not. now is to mark out for this here. Because it's a dovetail guide, nice to have a little dovetail. Now I'm going to allow 10mm either side. First things first, let's mark here. Scribing the line, scribe rough end. I haven't bothered squaring those edges off because as long as these two faces are parallel, I don't need these two faces to be 100% parallel. So I'm going to use the prototype. So this is the first example of how this works. Use it to mark out nice and square. So I can either balance that on the vise or I can balance it on the bench, to be honest. It's easier done like that. Take your saw. And there you see the magnet just holds the saw into the guide. Now I don't like doing it that way, so I'm going to swap that over. Unfortunately, this guide does not give you a square edge. It might be something that I need to address later on. That cut I can line up my centre lines. This will be our waste. If you put that in, put the guide on. And then once you've got your cut established, so here we are. A little bit of time has passed. Enough to let that set. Quite pleased with that. I know the inside is 90 degrees, so we're just going to tidy up those edges. So the next step, make this nice and chunky so it's easy to hold. Let's go over to the miter saw. So next, I kind of want 2 in there, and 3 in there. Now that may seem a little bit extreme, but I want to make sure that I get enough hold. And if at a later date I want to remake this, then I'll use stronger magnets and I'll remake it, because it's a jig that can be remade quite easily. If you decide to make this yourself, you can space these however you want. No skin off my nose. Let's take this over to the drill press. Just to give it a test, it's 2 bits of maple, or 1 bit of maple that I've cut in half. without much chiselling. So overall I'm quite pleased with the results of this. It was a fun little project to make. It's only taken me a day, apart from the prototyping, that took ages. The wood that I used here, I didn't surface it or thickness it or anything, but it's given a reasonably good cut. It's helped me keep those lines straight, it helped stop the saw wandering. I might use it more as a marking gauge than a cutting gauge, but it might just help to refine my technique a little bit along the way. So I've given it a good old sand, and all that remains now, just going to give it a little coat of tea coil to help bring out those lovely colours. If you give this a go yourself, and you've got any suggestions how it can be improved or any tweaks that can be made to it, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching to the end. Give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to know when the next video comes out. Thanks for watching. Bye.